Apple and Tesla split on Monday means that temporarily you may have 10 times the amount of money in your account, but only for today prior to the full calibration being done is our main focus of our show to start. And we also do our channel check in terms of what's going on with Tesla. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We're also grateful to our Patreon supporters. If you're not a Patreon supporter, you may be missing out on a large amount of information that might help in your trading and investment process and therefore profits over time. So today, obviously, is the day before split day for Tesla as well as for Apple. One of the things that's happening is you'll notice if you watch your account on a daily basis, there's a large amount of changes occurring in terms of what they're saying about the value of your shares or options or whatever you have relative to both companies. I wanted to encourage you to particularly take a look at Tesla shares, because this morning I was having a conversation with one of my trading buddies, and he pointed out that on a temporary basis, because of the split occurring on the number of shares but not on the value per share, there's a situation where his actual value that's showing in the account is 10 times what the actual value is on a temporary basis. So I thought about it and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. I'll go check it out. And in fact, that's the case. He's trading it primarily Ameritrade, so it may or may not be the case in the account that you're trading in. So then I was thinking to myself, wow, well, it's nice that it's there currently, but who cares? Because tomorrow, the numbers will recalibrate properly so that trading starts at 4 o'clock in the morning, Eastern time, and all the recalibrations will be done by then. And so therefore, what's the value of that information? And interestingly enough, there is a value to that, which is it turns out that there's a large number of entities that have certain types of investments that have certain net worth thresholds that are out there. And if you meet those net worth thresholds, you're now allowed to invest in certain types of private equity and other investment vehicles. So the concept I wanted you to take a look at is you may want to think about getting a lot of screenshots, taking pictures of balances, etc., because you may want to store that away, because if you don't really have the net worth to get into some of the heavier duty investments, this might be your chance to get a little nibble at having sort of the credentials necessary to be considered for certain types of investments. So on one hand, it's not a big deal because the numbers are up. But on the other hand, this actually could be a very lucrative situation for you because it allows you to present way better in certain circumstances relative to your net worth and value of your portfolio, particularly, in a snapshot as we have it right now. So probably won't want to use it, but that's something to think about. The next thing we wanted to cover with the split that's going on right now is just the fact that there's a lot of new waters that we're moving into in terms of how the stock will perform short and long term and what the reaction of buyers and sellers is going to be over the next few days. Now, we went through a list of what tends to happen pre, during, and post splits. And I really think that particularly for Tesla, but a little bit for Apple as well, you still have a few days of euphoria to deal with. And when it comes to consumers, and in theory, that euphoria may be short-lived because consumers don't represent the bulk of the share owners. But I am looking forward to a 3-day rule hit when it comes to Tesla and possibly Apple as well, where at the third day, as we've discussed in many occasions, institutions have an incentive to sort of get in and purchase shares after analysts have had a chance to review what's going on and is it a good time for them to actually do that buying. And I think particularly for institutions that want to do round lotting on Tesla as well as Apple, it's going to be a good time to buy So don't be surprised if you see kind of a updraft initially for Tesla and Apple, and then a pullback over a day or two, and then we switch off to a situation where we kind of get institutions back in buying, so we could get a little bit of a up push from that. The next thing I wanted to review is the fact that implied volatility. As you have the split occur, the per share volatility is actually going to be down. So if you're used to, for example, with Tesla getting a 50-point move, maybe a 100-point move daily, in theory with 1/5 the shares, for what you see per share, that number may drop down to a 10, 20, 30-point day rather than a 50, 80, 100-point day as a result. Now, if you throw in the S&P, I guess you would say that definitely would move it beyond that. But if you're expecting the number to be lower, I think you can plan accordingly in terms of your trading activities. So we look forward to a nice move up for the stock initially, or stocks, both Apple and Tesla. And then we're kind of expecting a little bit of a pullback, possibly first day, but definitely by second or third day. And then perhaps a helper from the institutions as we described. And so we look forward to covering it for you and seeing where we can help in terms of information add. What I've chosen to do today, so that sort of finishes up our temporary coverage in terms of what we're expecting from the splits over the next couple of days. I wanted to move on today, in the case of Tesla, to look at something we call a channel check. So the video you're seeing now is video that we've taken of the service facility, a place called Tyson's Corner, which is in McLean, Virginia. And we basically try to get there at least once a month, if not twice, to generally see what's going on. The first thing to note, and you'll be able to count cars if you slow down that video, is that we're definitely at the 100 cars in service level. That's on one side of the building. The issue is that the real number for service is becoming harder to assess, because the way it worked in the old days of last year before, was all the service vehicles would sit outside the building on the right side of the building if you're facing from the street. And what's happened as Tesla has grown is the number of vehicles in the service facility keep growing. And so they've sort of started putting them in the back of the building. And then what we noticed on our last long visit was they had started, when cars are selling, moving service vehicles actually inside the storage buildings that were usually reserved for new vehicles that they didn't want potentially damaged by birds or other things. And so that I thought was kind of interesting. So basically the repair fleet is growing pretty dramatically, I would say. Outdoors you can count, 60, 70, 80 cars. But by the time you get to the back of the building, there's a new thing going on, which is you can tell a car has been sold to a consumer because it has a license plate on the front. But there are a number of vehicles that are back there now without license plates. So it looks like used inventory is also being stored there. Also, if those vehicles aren't new in particular, I saw a few Model S's that you'll see in the video as we go by the back side of the building. The other thing that was noticeable here, usually we only do brief stops at the major storage facilities. So if you look in, the whole feel of the place is not excess inventory, but a lot more inventory than we saw when, Fremont was shut down, for sure. So it feels like we're 85 to 90% full right now when it comes to inventories of vehicles. The biggest surprise, I would say, is the prevalence, or the fact that Model 3 and Model Y seem to be the largest count of vehicles that are sitting there. The process you'll notice, or we've noticed over time, is that usually they fill up the storage facilities indoor, and then if they're extra new vehicles, they'll actually put them outdoors, parked on an angle on the left side of the building. So if we concentrate only on the new side of the building, it's, like what you can see outdoors is probably 10 to 12 Model Ys of different colors and structures, be it performance or, I guess long range. And then you'll also notice that, there are probably Model 3 is the more obvious large number of vehicles that are out there. Does that mean X's and S's are not being sold? No, they're actually being stored indoors versus out, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, the general take on things seems to be that there's plenty of inventory for people who want to buy cars of different configurations, both Y and 3. And then we're seeing also, in general, I can't figure out where we're at because we only go there once a month, maybe twice a month. So it's hard to tell when inventory turns versus if it's sitting. It definitely has a way different feel, you'll notice, versus our last show that we were there, in that, there's a lot of cars there and there's still a lot of interest. It was raining yesterday, Saturday, so perhaps that influenced buyers' willingness to come out and do things. As usual, I'm amazed when I go because there's always an interesting collection of folks that are coming to look or buy a Tesla, and they're usually driving some different vehicles that I didn't expect out there. So you'll notice that there's actually a Ford pickup that's been elevated with blacked out windows. And that was kind of a surprise for me to see someone looking at transitioning out of a vehicle like that into a Tesla of some sort. So we're, pleasantly surprised on what's going on. I guess the last thing I wanted to review today is just the fact that I wanted to ask you to take some time to watch some video on a place called Shenzhen, China. I've been watching some video about it over the last few days, and I was really stunned at what I saw, primarily because 30 years ago it was 300,000 people. Now it's something like 60 million people, and it's basically at the inland portion just above Hong Kong. And, amazing sort of stuff there, including BYD. All the buses are electric, and BYD made them. They're drawing more venture capital in Silicon Valley. Plenty of wealth when it comes to folks that might buy things like Teslas. I wanted to encourage you to take a look at this because we're putting together a show related to what to expect in China for Tesla. And based on exposure to places like Shenzhen, even if it's by video, et cetera, we're going to bring together, I think, a collection of information that I think you'll be pretty impressed by. In particular, I guess one of the data points I was impressed by is I believe that for the next year, between now and the end of the year, China is actually going to sell 1 million Teslas. So, that are mostly built in China, but they'll do some of the exports of vehicles not being built in China. But I think those folks are doing some amazing work there. And it is definitely time for us to review the China situation, given the size that we've seen at the Shanghai facility and the plan Tesla/Elon have to try and build in a couple of different parts of the country. So we look forward to doing our show on that angle. The final thing that we wanted to review is our usual health tips. We wanted to note that this is the formal end part of our coverage of Tesla, and at the end of the show, I really like to do health tips based on a survey we've done with about 150 doctors in the NIH Bethesda area of Washington, D.C. We sort of have our list of top 10, but the top 5 would be, number 1, try to do 25 leg lifts a day. While you're sitting in a chair, you put a weight on your leg that's at least 5 pounds and lift that weight 25 times every day strengthens your quad muscles, reduces the issues with knees as you age. The second suggestion was made by a kidney doc in Rockville, Maryland. He recommended no more than once a week for fried foods because it's a source of type 2 diabetes, as those fried foods are stored near your kidneys, or they're stored by your body near major organs instead of kind of moving through, as would have been the case with regular food. The third suggestion was a 5-2 or other diet. A lot of people weren't recommending diets, but in terms of the docs we spoke with, but about 60-70% of them were doing it. So I thought it was interesting to see what their take on things was for themselves, and thought it might be useful. I always mention the 5-2 diet, but there are so many different ones. One that I kind of liked was one of the docs recommended that you only eat on 12 hours of the clock. So your first and last meal should be no more than a 12-hour half of the clock, and don't eat on the other half. And I think that's a suggestion I could live with in terms of, restricting, eating time as a way to be healthier. The next suggestion was at least a 30 SPF or better from a NIH doc regarding skin cancer issues. And then the last one I'd like to include today is just the things like playing instruments or going dancing a couple of 3 times a month are ways to help mental faculties keep growing and be well-oiled for a better quality of life. Any rate, want to thank you for taking time to join us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lehitrot, Hebrew, Hoda Hafez, Farsi, Assalamu alaikum, Muslim, Ni hao ma, Chinese, hello, Zdravstvuyte, hello in Russian, Do widzenia, Polish, Hey Do, Swedish, and in Jamaica we say Nuff respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and bye for now.